To order the meeting of the Westminster Select Board.
Recording in progress.
Go Alexa.
Creepy.
Hey, Kevin, Darlene said she's not being let in. I don't know if there are other people.
Okay, we will.
Okay.
Thank you, Cindy.
Yeah, front door. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Chuck,
I'll
what
go do it.
generation you from?
The front door.
That's old school.
It's hard to believe that you're probably the only one in here and you figured out that one.
He was like on it. Nice job.
Nice.
We're all set?
Darlene, you with us?
She's connecting right now. I can see it.
So pretty loud.
You want me to turn it down a little bit?
Please, would you?
Absolutely.
Just a touch, appreciate that. Thank you. Is she there?
It says everyone's connected.
Darlene?
Yeah, I'm here. Hold on.
Okay, great. Thanks for being here.
Sure.
Okay. We have called to order. Now adjustments to the agenda.
I need to add one more cemetery deed under 6F, so there would be a total of 3.
And I just want to make a comment, probably
Sure.
under new business, about welcome packets to the town.
You want to put it under other business?
Or new business, doesn't matter.
What's your pleasure?
New business.
New business it is. Welcome packets. Okay. Moving on, acceptance of minutes, September 8th, 2021.
Move that we accept the minutes of the meeting of September 8th as printed.
I'll second.
Motion to accept the minutes of September 8th, 2021 have been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I abstain, I was not there.
Okay. One abstention. Toby Young was not present. Thank you, Toby. Minutes are hereby adopted. Thank you. Okay, communication and public comments. School district invoice, Mr. David Major.
Hi. First, I have happy news to report that last Wednesday, after a great deal of patience and perseverance by citizens of this town, the State Board of Education did their final okay about us regaining our town school district. So that is a done deal at this point. We will be at town meeting time voting on the budget for the next school year starting July 1. We'll also be voting on school board members, electing school board members. So anyway, congratulations to all of us.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work.
And then I think I mentioned this school district invoice, and I think it's for expenses that the town has. I mentioned it to some of the other board members, and we're meeting tomorrow night. But I need to hear what the expenses are and pass it on and have it discussed at the school board meeting tomorrow night, so that we can come up with the funds or come up with whatever we feel is fair, or depending on what the invoice is. So
I have my copies right there. Great. I have others, but there's definitely packets right there.
So this is, if you don't mind, I'm making sure I understand it. Absence of tax rate. Oh, it was because an additional mailing had to be sent out, is that right?
That's correct.
And so those are two items of that amount.
Correct.
And then
Just recently, the elections.
the elections, okay, printing the ballots. Okay, and there's no legal fees in here?
We've incurred all of those, and they're paid.
All right, well, what I'll do, if it's okay with you, is just take this to the joint Unified District Board meeting and Westminster School District Board meeting, which are tomorrow night, and get back to you about it. Does that sound fair?
That's more than fair.
Okay, I do see that there's an additional, under 6D, item invoice for school district. Are you going to be skipping over that? Should I stay around for that item?
I put it there in case they had to vote to approve whatever you told them.
Okay.
So they can't, under communications and public comment, so I put it there. But if you don't have any information for them, then that's probably going to just be tabled.
Correct.
Okay.
Unless there's any comment from the public at this time on school district invoice. Seeing none also, thank you.
Sorry, Kevin, it's Cynthia. I do have a comment. I think I mentioned it to you and I mentioned it to Russ at one point. I don't know if the board is aware, but this town does get a portion of money for collecting school property taxes every year. It's a deduction from the payment they have to send to the school anyways. So I don't know if that's been taken into consideration as part of this invoice. It's on the cash flow statement from the state of Vermont. This year, it's $9,633 that you get to deduct from what you owe the school for property taxes.
Okay,
But Cynthia, in the past, we've always had that. It was always to do the paperwork, prepare. This was something that was never part of the past.
Well, the first part, maybe not the election part, but the part where they had to do the rebill because of the tax rate not being ready.
Correct.
That's what this money is for revisions of property tax bills, producing the tax bills, mailing them out, and all of that. That was the intent of the town to be able to keep a portion of the school property taxes to help the administrative costs for the town.
But go back to my thing, we've already included those because we regular election, in the regular election, in the regular tax bill, there's money in there to do that. Now, this is not the regular, this is above and beyond. You see what I'm saying?
I don't know that the rebill for the tax rate not being ready was above and beyond, but maybe that's just a debate that I don't agree and you guys don't agree with me, but.
It's a discussion.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to be sure that the people that are new on the board realized that this is an amount that the town gets to keep every single year for the administrative costs for the school district collection of property taxes, if they were not aware of that.
Correct. I don't disagree with that at all.
Thank you.
and thank you for being here, and thank you for addressing that specific item that you had already brought to our attention, and thank you for your counsel as always. Thank you. That will be taken under consideration in this matter. Any other comments from the public? Okay, thank you so much. Moving on to unfinished business. American Rescue Plan, ACT, ARPA, COVID, local recovery funds update.
We have 12 members. I got one today. Paul Cody would like to be added to the list. We are meeting Tuesday at 5:30 which is the 28th of September. It is going to be in person and by Zoom. I've never hosted a meeting before, so it's going to be interesting, but Pauline has, so she's going to help me. We did get 2 days ago an email from Margot Gaia from Wyndham Regional that gave us some reporting deadlines that the committee will be taking in consideration. I have a bunch of copies if you're interested in them. If not, then I'll just pass them out to the committee members. But again, it gives us some highlights to reach throughout the years to actually obtain the funds that have been promised to us. So, are you interested?
I think I saw it, you forwarded it.
I did.
Yeah.
I did,
yeah, I have
but
it, yeah.
I printed a bunch of copies for
Yeah, thank you.
folks that are interested, so.
Thank you. Okay, any comment from select board? Any comment from the general public? Okay, well done. We have an excellent list of citizens to begin that work, and thank you, Russell, for getting that assembled. Moving on to Hartley Hill Road, private section update, if any.
I passed the whole file.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Russ.
I'm sorry, Russ.
No problem.
Thank you.
I passed the whole Hartley Hill Road file to legal counsel. I think it was on Wednesday. Today's Wednesday, so it had been Tuesday. So they are working on it. I did get a phone call from Robert Wickberg, and he hadn't heard anything. So they're working on it. That's all I can pass along at this point.
Okay. Any comments from the board? General public? Okay. Moving on to collaborative finance processing manual update.
At this point, we hadn't gone much further. We are, at the last meeting, we now have an assistant treasurer, and Darlene and Paul are working on the final touches to put into the
Darlene
manual.
has a lot of the paperwork that I've done, and she's in the process of going through it and printing it out in legible forms and taking
I
steps.
actually have documented 2 procedures that I did when I did the bank reconciliation this month. I put that out all on paper, and how to reconcile the quarterly reports. So I have started all of that, and I've taken Paul's notes from the office today and will retype them and start the accounts payable functions and the cash receipts. So I will have those done by the next meeting.
Terrific. Thank you both. Any questions or comments from the board?
No, that's great.
That's very good. General public, any comments? Anything to add? Darlene, thank you. Okay, moving on to the 5-year capital plan update.
I guess I'll comment on that. Chuck just gave me, as you know, Chuck and I met about upgrades to the town garage that we're looking at in the future, and I asked Chuck to get estimates, and he's given them to me. I don't think we have any other projects or parts of the capital plan yet. Is that correct, Craig?
Yeah, because I didn't go with Chuck, the installation guy came today by
Right.
coincidence. So
Yeah.
we went in and did the community house, and then he left to go look at what insulation Chuck would be looking at his place. I guess the good news was he was kind of happy we didn't paint the clapboards, because that is how he would get in to insulate it.
Yeah,
It is, almost no insulation at all in that building, but
yeah,
he made it sound like it would be the building. What he saw of the building, he thought was pretty impressed. He said, you got a good sound building right here. Makes a lot of sense what we're trying to do.
mhm,
He's gonna come back with some suggestions, because if you remember, there's a cement wall, partial way down. He says you could put a wall, sub-wall over that with some insulation at the same time on the inside, which he would suggest. He'll come back with a breakdown.
mhm.
So
Yeah.
But that's how they would basically do, is coming from the outside clapboards and
Yeah.
do it that way.
Well, I originally had this idea that we would have this big plan and, all the projects and all the estimates and prioritize. I doubt we're going to get to that for budget, but I am going to recommend or suggest that replacement of the fuel tanks happen this year. Chuck seems to think that's the most important thing. Yes, am I correct?
Yes.
So where we decide to ask for that money, we can just talk about it later. whether
I
in the
think
budget or
the
whatever.
community house has to be like a package, so I'm meeting Monday with the fuel oil person that's gonna get us, look at the chimney, look at everything to give us an estimate for heat. So I can put together the insulation and the heat, because next major step is to insulate the building and turn the heat on.
Mhm.
We need to have all those numbers so we could go in March to the voters. Part of it would be the committee itself come up with ideas, what would we do once we did
Right.
get the heat on and get the insulation.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you for doing that.
No problem.
Thank you. Any more comments? General public? Okay, moving on to the front steps. A repair proposal.
In your packet, you have the Brennan proposal, the concrete repair, the grinding and the leveling would be by the contractor, and he's asking for $1,400 to paint the 2 coats of solid resistant paint. And he also attached in your packet a letter that suggests, as suggested, I contacted Carroll Concrete to inquire about the concrete repair. They assured me that they do not install any products, they are just a supplier. They carry a structural patching compound, which is a popular product that can be found on the shelf at Home Depot. I believe patching and painting with the steps of the chemical resistant paint is the best option at this point. The only other option is to jackhammer the top layer off the entire step and pour a thin layer of concrete with only fine aggregates. Either way, the heavy use of salt will probably continue to compromise the steps over time. Doing small repairs now will allow for the option of not doing a large repair years down the road. The paint should provide protection against salt, and it can be assessed and reapplied yearly if needed. So I need your thoughts. He gave me a brochure of the colors and et cetera, multiple colors.
How much does this product cost that we're paying $1,400? I mean, you think if we could get, if the product isn't harmful, we could get people to even donate time to put it on. But it seems like $1,400, unless the product costs $1,000.
I don't know. He didn't break it down. That's what
Yeah.
you got is what I got.
And we would be paying for this, the town?
That's what he's asking, is that we pay the painting and he will grind and patch.
For free.
It's free.
The
Which is a cost
$800,
of
he's gonna do
$800.
repair because it was his.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know, I just have a hard time with $1,400. Even, like I said, even if we had to purchase the paint and he purchased the labor, you know what I'm saying? So there's not money out of his pocket other than his labor, is what I would be coming back to ask for. That's just me. So I'm assuming it's $300, $400, $500 for paint. I don't know what it is, but
It's expensive stuff.
It could be.
And that's 2
And
gallons.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
So we buy
I
it.
think it's 8 gallons that's figuring
Because
out.
we basically would own all the paint, we would make sure we kept putting it on until we used it all up and started painting, and he would just furnish the labor. Since he's in there doing the repairs anyway, so. Then there's no physical money, I guess, what you can't out of his pocket, other than his labor. But that's just where I'm coming from.
Any other comments, please?
I'm not real excited to spend any money on it, to be honest with you, but we've already spent it once. I think if it was done right and sealed, as suggested, we wouldn't be here right now.
I agree.
But it is gonna get worse, so
You have to
it's
do
not gonna
something.
fix itself.
Exactly.
Any other comments?
We got time for him to come back with an answer?
Yeah,
What if he'll pay for the whole thing? Is that what we're asking?
Or
and
we-
don't let me put words in your mouth, but you
Uh-huh.
just said that we will buy the paint and he
That's where I'm coming from.
paints it.
That's only where I'm coming from. Obviously, first you would say, we're shocked that we're paying anything.
I've already told him that, and I told his father that.
I think probably Craig's suggestion's a good middle of the road, though. If we're gonna need to reapply 2 years or a year later, at least we
We'd have
own the
the
product, provided it doesn't go bad, opened or whatever.
We would control how much it goes on. If all of a sudden he only uses 4 gallons and we already paid $1,400, we're not getting a good deal. But on the other hand, buy it all, we own it, and he furnishes the labor to put it on. That's just- Because we didn't get that product put on in the first place, that he probably would have billed us to put it on. So that's just wrong.
Well, I think a sealer up front would be considerably less money than $1,400. If put on
I
up
don't
front.
know, but I would assume so.
I'd like to push him to do the whole deal, but if he fights back hard, then we'll go that way. I mean, I'm good with either way.
Any other comments about asking him to push back and ask him to do it for nothing? Right?
That's where I
I have a
started.
comment.
Please.
I just want people to be, we need to keep in mind that with new concrete, you're supposed to wait 30 days before you paint it.
Thank you, Fran.
You're welcome.
So, do we want to, so Russ, you're gonna go back and,
Well, the other thing is our window of good weather is gonna shorten by the day, so.
I mean, he's got the approval from us for the $800 that we're not gonna spend to go ahead and fix it. It's a matter. So that's a separate item, so he could go ahead and do that, but, yeah.
You still need to seal it to protect it of some kind.
There's no question. Yeah. There's no question.
So my thought is he's come in to repair. He wants to complete, regularly. So if you swap the two, we apply, he buys paint. I think for the town, it's a better deal. I think the paint is a lot more than the labor. I'm just guessing, but I don't.
He
didn't break it out.
knows we're all done. If we got volunteer help, we'd be free, is what you're saying.
When he comes, he will finish and be gone, and then it's up to us to apply that stuff.
But he would purchase the paint.
Exactly. He'd leave it.
I'll leave it up to you to go back and negotiate.
All right,
whichever way.
I'll negotiate, but do I have permission to do
Do
what?
for me, but yeah.
Spend up to.
On it.
I need at least a rough guess of what I can spend. Do I have permission to spend all?
So you're saying you're talking about have him do the repair?
If you're gonna split the stuff, so instead of having him come patch, we negotiate the 1,400 at a separate date, then he's gotta come back to apply it. If we negotiate and we buy, we do the labor, he buys the paint, then he's done one shot, he's out of here, and we can apply it on a really nice warm day and soon, and get it done.
But
I thought Craig said he wanted us to buy the paint.
That's what I'm saying, is I'm trying to switch that so that it gets done in one visit.
That way, there's no money out of our pocket, is what you're saying. In other words, he would furnish everything, we would furnish the labor, there is no money.
That's correct.
I have no problem with that either.
That's correct.
Okay.
neither do I. Do we have a consensus on the board?
Yes.
Does Chuck have anything to say? He's probably gonna be the one putting it on. I mean, time-wise, health-wise, it's.
We're so far behind now.
I was gonna say,
It's another day.
I'll do the paint Don't worry
We'll
about
figure it
that.
out. It shouldn't be just employees for the town. We can find some volunteers. We'll make it on a Saturday.
Okay, we all set?
Skip flying today.
Okay.
I think so.
Great. Moving on. New business, discussion, action. The financial discussion, very good to have Darlene Kelly and Cynthia Stoddard with us. Darlene?
First of all, did you guys get the packet that I asked Russ to print out for you late in the day? With the balance sheet, a budget status report, and some comments?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, so I suggest maybe we first look at the balance sheet. I don't know if you get this on a regular basis, but I think it's a very important piece of your financials when you're looking at them each time, because it really shows you where your cash is and what you may owe out in liabilities to things, and it goes hand in hand with your budget status. So if you've only been looking at that budget status, I think you're only getting half of the picture. You're not getting your whole financial picture. So I think this is a key document to go along with your budget status report. So I'm just going to kind of run through it just a little bit so that new folks, or if it's new to anyone looking at it, they can understand what I look at when I'm looking at it. So the first line that I would see is your Muskoma checking account. After paying the school today, you have 1.843 million, 45. Our reports are little, sorry. $1 million in the bank.
Arlene, what page?
Yeah, I think they're scrambling to find.
Okay. Yep. So it's the balance sheet. If you look at the balance sheet, it says 1 of 2 at the very top. It says balance sheet current year period 3.
Right.
Okay, I'm with you.
Okay.
Okay.
Fourth one down. This is my book.
So this does everybody see where I'm looking at the 1,845,000?
Yes. Everybody have that?
So that is your general fund checking account that houses most of your money for the town. Although some of the other funds' money might be housed in that bank account, the primary money is at Muskoma and often is used for your accounts payable, paying your bills, and potentially paying things out of other funds as well. But that's where, if you were to look at your bank account as of today, that's how much money you have in the bank. You still owe the fire district because we just did that today. I hadn't booked it. So that comes down under your liabilities of what money you still owe out. So this is telling me taxpayers have overpaid taxes in the amount of $12,000. So at the end of the year, you either issue a refund to the taxpayer if they request, or you bring it forward to fiscal year 23. But right as they stand, those are not money you get to show as revenue. It is really owed out to the taxpayer. At any point in time, they can request a refund of their overpayment. And as we go down, your other liabilities are the 139 is roughly a little less than that we determined today is due to the fire district, which I believe Paul transferred today. So I will book that entry. And then kind of going down through. So the other big piece I think that's important to look at is on page 2 is the fund balance section of the report. So this tells me last year, we ended the year, unless Chad comes back with any other major changes to the fund balance, we carried forward $474,000.48. It's basically savings that have built up over the years from having a surplus on your budget. From year to year, you're carrying forward. So you're carrying almost $500,000 of savings forward from year to year in your budget by not spending it. That's a huge amount for a town. So that
Can I just interject? Can I just interject something, Darlene? And remember, when she says the 474, that is not your emergency fund. That is not any of your other reserved. That's unreserved fund balance. Out of that, you guys had 100,000 you're going to use towards taxes this year. So you carried forward almost $400,000 in surplus. So when we talk about the balance sheet for the general fund, that's unreserved, just cash on hand. Is that right, Darlene? Am I saying that?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that's kind of the balance sheet. But again, I think it's important to always have that with your budget status report. So the other big report, 1 out of 9, is the budget status report that you're used to getting probably when Russ gives you a financial statement. I assume you're getting this whole budget status report when he gives that to you. So I'm not going to go over this too much in depth because I feel like you've seen it. You kind of are aware. So I kind of just did an overview in a summary form of the things that I looked at as I was going through this budget status report. And I thought, maybe if we like proceeding this way, it could be, this is what I'm seeing on a month or quarterly basis based on your budget status. What am I noting that looks within reason for the period we're reporting? What looks a little high to me? So I just did this simple summary today that I noted that you have your property tax collection is about 50% of the budget for the first payment, which makes sense. I also went then into the tax administration module and ran your delinquent tax report because I wanted to see where did that stand in comparison to your budget and to what you still have to collect. So what I noted is there's almost $100,000 still to be paid from payment 1. So if folks didn't pay, that's what is still outstanding from payment 1. And your delinquent taxes from last year are almost $51,000. So when you're looking at that delinquency, that's another piece as you look at your budget and what you've collected and what is due from prior years. That could be, you've budgeted $80,000 in delinquent taxes and you've collected 45 already, and you still potentially have another 51 to collect. So there's a chance that as you budget for that next year, that may be, you want to adjust that a bit because that's almost $96,000 and you're budgeting about 80. So those are the kind of things that I just look at. Like, I think it's important to look at all modules in the financial system, not just taking this budget status report, because it tells you a complete picture of what is all happening, not just what your expenditures and what little bit of revenue you might have on your budget status. So I noted that you got your ARPA money. Your ARPA money is sitting in a separate fund by itself, but you got almost $464,000 in ARPA money. The cash sits in your Mascoma account, but the money sits in a fund. So there's a due to, due from. So that tells me that the general fund knows that the money belongs to another fund, but the general fund can use that money if needed until that fund needs it and starts spending it. And that's typical in a nonprofit government entity. this due to, due from that's how it operates. That is legal and that is how the financials work. You have miscellaneous revenue that's over budget. So you got about $3,500 in there. Looked like an audit from workers' comp refunded you some money and an oil spill cleanup. Other than that, the rest of your revenues seem to be on target. So what I'm looking at is it's a quarter of your budget, because you're about to a calendar quarter end. And so I'm looking at 25% kind of the target that I'm looking at when I'm looking at expenditures and revenue. So when I looked at the expenditures, I'm just looking at what looks a little high. So I looked through a couple things. I don't think they're super concerning, but you're seeing that you got $550,000 that you've paid out for the storm. It's sitting in a selectman category of your budget actual. I think we should move that. I don't think it should sit there in the selectman section. But that's what you spent so far on the storm for August. And then your clerical and election supplies are a little high. Your guardrails are over budget already. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on. And your social services payments haven't been made. I just noted that. So that was kind of like when I'm looking at what I see going on in your financial statements as of, not a lot this quarter typically for a municipality. But as you get to the next quarter and start to think about budgeting, you want to look at this again. Does anybody have any questions?
First, yeah, I want to thank you for a really clear, concise, and coherent synopsis. This is wonderful, and all your fine work. I did want to ask, the 25% benchmark, is that something you guys, in your expertise, find is really where most towns, such as ours, usually, are at?
Year to
To me,
date.
it's just simple math. It's a quarter of the year, so that's why I did it. So no, and some of the expenses don't flow like that. Like you're often paying a lot of your dues up front. Your your benefits don't ebb and flow right at 0.25%. So it's just a little benchmark I personally use in analysis of financials and just making sure that seems reasonable. And there's going to be line items that are 100% already because you're due to pay them at the beginning of the year. And so that makes sense. But I would look at those and look what the description is and say, does that make sense that that's already at 100%? So like I saw VLCT was at 100%. You had to pay their dues right off. That made sense to me. So it's like, yeah, that's going to happen. So the things, like I said, just a few of these were what caught my eye, that they're already at 50 or above or close to that in the expenditure percentage. So that's why I noted them.
Anything in this review, though, or otherwise, that you find is very, very important that you are uncomfortable with?
Not uncomfortable with. I think it's important that the board pays attention to the next section of my summary of all of those fund balances. We, and I'm going to say this, because I'm a taxpayer as well, this is a lot of money. This is a lot of money to have, and we've done well, I would say, in building some funds and reserves, but I question how are you going to use these, and why do we need to keep building them? This is a lot of money to have for projects, and that's why that's concerning to me. And then why we borrowed money when we have this kind of fund balance is kind of baffling to me from a financial world that I live in. I didn't understand that. I personally don't agree with it because we have a lot of cash that we could borrow from ourselves. And even though the interest rate is low, why pay any when we can use our own money to do the project? So that's my concern. And just planning, what is this money going to be used for? Do we have plans for this money? The ARPA money, I get, that's still in the works, and the reappraisal money, but the rest of the, is this working into our budget? I feel like we just keep adding to our budget and not using what we already have.
Thank you very much for your opinion, both professionally and as a fellow taxpayer, and all your hard work. Comments? Questions?
Well, I have a comment. For some of these funds, some of the projects that we're going to spend money on are pretty extensive. For instance, the Bridge Rehabilitation Fund, the West-West Bridge, what's that going to cost us, Russ?
The Saxons River is coming up first, and
That's
that is
83.
in the $55,000 range.
Right,
And then the East Putney
right.
Brook, right? East Putney Brook Bridge is in the $220,000 range for our portion.
Right, so that's going to be a big one. And then the garage fund, we've been talking, that's only 63,000, but I've been talking to Chuck about upgrades that the town garage needs, starting with replacement of the fuel tanks, which is going to be $61,000. So that's going to take everything we have in the town garage fund now. So the idea of a lot of those funds is, instead of waiting until it's time to pay, is to put some money aside. And I'd argue some of the funds we have not put enough money aside yet. But I think when we talk about the capital plan, what I'm hoping is we would have an idea of when we're going to spend that money. It's probably not going to be this year, but yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Kevin, it's Cynthia. Can I say something? So in going back to what Darlene said, and I agree, Susan, that I think part of the struggle has been we as taxpayers haven't seen the capital plan that you're talking about. So that's being worked on, and that's going to be really good information for us to have to understand what the funds that are being set aside for future expenses are for. So I totally am on board with that. That's something I think that should be done. And there is a part of me that believes the way that you do, that there's probably not enough money put in there right now for some capital expenditures in the future. It's just really hard for us and you too, to see that without this plan. So I'm glad the plan's being worked on. My issue as looking at it from a financial perspective is not so much, I mean, these funds are important for you guys to see on a regular basis what the balances are in them. I think it's something that maybe you haven't had complete picture in the past of, and to know that this is cash on hand, like Darlene said, that you can borrow from yourself instead of a bank. But my bigger concern is that at the end of FY21, you had almost $400,000 in undesignated fund balance. You then had $150,000 in a contingency, the emergency fund. And then you went out and borrowed money, even though you had almost $500,000 in cash. And there's been discussion between me and a couple board members just chatting about it, and just between Darlene and I, of that. I didn't understand that myself. You had the cash on hand, so I wasn't clear if you guys really understood how the system works with tracking all of that. You borrow from yourself before you go to a bank. My bigger concern is coming up to budget season is that there is no way that we will have been reimbursed by any funding agency for the cost of this storm by town meeting. I just can't even see it happening. I don't even know if a declaration has been finished yet by the feds or not. But so short-term borrowing only lasts for a certain amount of time. We are going to have to turn this into a long-term borrowing because we're going to have to pay the money back, or we're going to have to pay the money out of our cash. So I just want to make sure you guys understand that there is cash. There is money sitting there. Do we want to deplete it down to zero? Probably not. But I've heard that we had $250,000. I've heard that we have 400. I've heard all these numbers going around at meetings that we just didn't have the money to pay for the storm. And that's just not the case. And I don't think it's because anybody was trying to do anything. I don't want to accuse anybody of anything, but I think that it's just a lack of understanding of how the funds and the cash actually work.
We're all taxpayers here, Cynthia, and neighbors. Please feel free to speak bluntly.
Well, I think I do pretty much most of the time, don't I?
You do, but I'm saying that don't feel as if, we want to do it right.
Yeah, I think it's a lack of understanding of fund accounting. And I think that this is a start of getting everybody to understand that process and what it means. But we have been hearing for years that the reason we're keeping this enormous surplus is for another devastating storm like Irene. And here we are, and we didn't use the surplus, we borrowed money. So that's what's concerning me as a financial person and as a taxpayer.
Thank you. Paul.
Seems to me that it'd be reasonable to wait to hear from our auditors to find out exactly what we do have for a surplus. I mean, you did have $250,000 in surplus that you've already spent, correct? Isn't that true?
That's correct.
The 100.
The emergency
Capital?
Reserve Fund.
The
That was 100. That's 150,000.
100 of capital, of kind of capital
Oh,
cash flow stuff.
Capital.
They've already spent
Working
250,000 of that. So theoretically, that's the only extra money from last year. We don't know yet. There is going to this at the end of 2021, but we don't know what that figure is yet. It seems to me reasonable to wait to hear from Chad, the auditors, to say, okay, this is what you do have in excess.
Before the last meeting, I called him, and he did finally get back to me, Jordan did. Told us that with the adjustments, that the surplus moving into FY '23 will be in the vicinity of $380,000.
FY '22 or '23?
End of FY '22, moving into FY '23. So at town meeting, we'd have to address that.
There's no way for him to know that, Russ. We haven't even spent money for FY '22 yet. He can't forecast FY '23.
End of 21.
21.
Sorry, yes, you're.
Fiscal year. What's the last fiscal year?
FY '21, my fault.
Yeah. So that is a significant amount of money, $380,000.
Right, which is what I said what I just said was we had $387,000 coming into the year.
We didn't know that figure until last week. That was really speculative.
It's okay. So I'm going to disagree with that because first of all, you should not be relying on your auditors for what your surplus is. They should be verifying the number you give them. Second of all, unless there's some gross mistake, which Darlene didn't catch at the end of the year, creating the financial statements for the auditor, then the number is what it is. I mean, we shouldn't be waiting for the auditor to tell us what our surplus is.
Continue.
It's the wrong way of thinking. The auditor is not our accountant. He is checking our numbers.
I'm not disputing any numbers that you have. When we talked about funding for that storm, we were told, with the information provided, was $250 that we had available.
Mm-hmm.
We needed the additional to be able to pay contractors. I hadn't heard that dollar figure of 400 and change till last week.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know how we'd be speculating that we had that money at that point, right? Am I using the right term? I don't know. I'm not disagreeing with you.
No, I don't feel, I guess the problem is that Darlene, who helped with the end of the year financial statements, was never asked how much you had. Had she been asked before the meeting that you decided to borrow the money, she would have been able to work through that and help you with that. So I think I need to move past that. We've borrowed the money. Now it's just maybe a training process so that you guys understand how to read the reports, so that when you do make these decisions, you do have all of the numbers in front of you.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
I guess that's where I'm at.
You keep bringing up borrowing money against what we have, and I'm looking at, I never knew you could borrow money against the funds you have. Because I do look at this community improvement loan, we got $177,000 sitting there that we don't use.
Mm-hmm.
But so what you're saying is, if we were in an emergency, we could have actually gone in and take money out of that, and as long as we paid it back? Is that what you're saying?
What's the process to do that?
All right, so let me just, does that one have a separate checking account, Darlene?
Yeah, that one has a separate checking account. So
Yeah,
that's probably not a good.
That's not a good example, but all of the other ones, the money is sitting in your cash account. It's called pooled cash.
Reappraisal fund, that's the amount of money we keep setting aside in case we do it. So let's just say this, for the next 2 years, we're not going to do a reappraisal. Can I borrow against that one?
Right. So when you spend money, let's say you spend money on the storm, okay, and you're depleting your actual physical cash in your checking account, there's a possibility that you are going below what the general fund actually has for cash that's pooled. So you're going to be taking money from these other funds. It might not specifically be reappraisal. It's just an ebb and flow of money coming in and money going out into all of these funds. The software tracks it automatically based on where you do your spending.
And I provided you guys a due from report. So if you look at that one sheet, that's what Cynthia's talking about. It was one sheet. It's called due to from. And that's the borrowing and paying back between funds. I don't know where it is.
So at any point, so let's use the reappraisal fund as the example. At any point during this process, if you had to make a fund whole because they started spending money out of it and you had no more cash, then yes, the town would have to borrow and give them the money. Or give that fund the money. But typically it doesn't happen because there's so much money coming in and going out all the time. And with the really high surplus that you guys have, you would have to be way overspending for a long time to ever run out of the physical cash. And I'll give you an example. In Putney, when we never had to borrow in anticipation of taxes because we had the water and sewer fund that were constantly bringing money in. So if the general fund ran low of cash, we were using some of that money. And then when the taxes got paid, we replenished it. But it's a natural replenishment through the software and the way that it actually does the automated due to from process.
So I have a question. This is Susan. So to go, so the way I'm understanding it, so last May, we, at our special town meeting, we allocated, the taxpayers allocated our surplus. It was insisted that we had to vote on how that surplus would be spent. Now we would be spending, say, you're saying for the storm, that we would use that surplus, even though the taxpayers have not told us we could do that. So then at next town meeting, there would be some way that the taxpayers would retroactively say, yes, that's fine that you spent the surplus on the storm damage?
Well, the surplus that you allocated, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was the $100,000, and then there was some other ones that were allocated to like maybe reserves, some more to bridges and stuff. That's been moved, and the 100,000. So I'm talking about the $300,000 surplus that you have is already taking that $100,000 out of it. So yes, if you depleted the entire thing, you still have obligated the 100,000. So at that point you would borrow. I'm not saying there's no point that you wouldn't borrow because we run out of money, because we have to make whole all those things that are reserved and you voted on. But it's timing of that borrowing. And I know money is cheap, but to be honest with you, it just makes you more mindful of your spending when you've got to be careful, and not when you have $500,000 at your disposal to just spend if you think you need it. So it's just it's a management of your finances that I've never seen a town borrow that much money when they have that much money on cash on hand, until you know that, okay, we're getting this money back through something, either the state or the feds or something.
Although we have not borrowed it, we have a line of credit, so we've actually only borrowed about half of it at this point. So it's there as an insurance fund, which we have spent part of.
So how much have you drawn from the line of credit?
$225,000.
Yeah. So the 225 and then the 150.
250. We took
Yeah.
the working capital and 150 from the emergency fund, all from the reserve fund balance policy. So actually spent 550, but we've only allocated funds for 475 of it.
Yeah.
So we still have 75,000 not addressed to date.
It's just a difference of, I don't know what I want to say. I think we just wanted to just make the point that there's a need for an understanding of the fund accounting and how you can borrow against yourself. That's all.
And that's very clear. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for all that you do in these and the input that you give us. At this point, I'd like to make a motion that we have Darlene Kelly give us a monthly, at one of our two meetings, give us a monthly synopsis, exactly similar of what she's doing now, until such time as we are all in agreement as to the policy, the proceeds, how the money's being allocated, and we're all up to speed on where the money is and how it can be addressed. And specifically, I'm interested very much, Cynthia, in the construct of utilizing money from these other funds in order to avoid your concern over immediately going to a loan during an emergency. So I'd like to make that motion to have Darlene give us a report once a month at one of the two meetings.
Second that.
Can we make the form, going way back to when Paul was there, we keep coming up with different So we never have anything long enough that we can just, every meeting almost look at it and go, I understand it. Seems like every time we turn around, we keep changing the format of what we're trying to do. So what I like to do is have her come back with a format that, one is we understand what it is, and two is that we all agree that this is the format that we want to see, so that we can try to learn and understand it all. It's just every time you hand me something, I gotta take longer to understand where the numbers came from.
Yeah, and, that's a great point, Craig, and that's part of the whole financial, this whole part of this process why Nemrick has come in with the book. So Darlene, is that something that you could do, come up with something maybe a little less largesse, something that's kind of small and something we can really take a look at and set us up for the long term to where that's what we look at, and everyone that comes on the board hereafter, this is the protocol and this is how we look at it. Is that possible?
Yes. Yeah, oh yes, definitely. We can make it a much easier to read and you can follow along, and then you can see, we can do, the change from we can put it in so that you can see, okay, last month we said it was this is what it's changed to now. We can definitely do that, so.
Wonderful. And having you come to one of the two meetings every month, is that possible?
Yep, that shouldn't be a problem.
Thank you, but any business you work with, what you rely on is actually having these that you're looking at last year's. So the longer we have it, you can look at it and go, okay, because I look at some of these numbers, I don't know where we're really supposed to be at, 50% or 40%, depends on when you're buying the heat and when you're not buying this and all that. But if at least you had the system that's just a simple, easy one, and then you could keep it, and the next year you go, look, well, this is where we were a year ago at this time. So it looks good or it doesn't look good. That's all.
No, that's an excellent.
I like this format.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, Darlene, if you could get it to them, I don't know when Russ sends the complete packet out to them, but if they had a couple days before the meeting to kind of absorb
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, my apologies for this last minute. That was my first go round at what we were doing, so.
Not at all. And
Start somewhere.
With Craig's motion, Craig's additive, and everyone's in agreement to have Darlene do this and report to us once every month, our two meetings. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Terrific. Again, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely, please, sir.
On guardrails, how are we over that already?
So,
Just a question.
a car hit the guardrails. I paid for them out of my budget. We got reimbursed by the insurance company, but it goes back to your general fund. That money doesn't come back to me.
I got you.
So it looks like I overspent, but in actuality, I didn't.
I got
We
you.
actually got reimbursed for all
And you
that.
got more money than you're supposed to, so he still owes us money for guardrails.
Yeah, that's right. So, but that's why I wanted to separate my budget from the general
No,
fund.
that makes sense. I was just
For
curious.
that exact reason.
Yes.
Because for people looking at it, it looks like I'm constantly overspending and stuff. If I got a grant, same thing. I pay for it out of my budget. Different things like, for instance, I'm looking at an equipment grant, okay, for a leaf blower. So I buy that out of my budget. Let's say my budget's close, I pay for it, I get reimbursed, but it never shows where it came back.
There's a credit back to
It
you.
doesn't, it's not a credit back to me. It looks like I overspent, when in actuality, I saved the town money.
Right.
So Darlene, probably what you could do too is when you get your report ready for them, if you run into stuff like that, maybe you and Chuck should get together and you can just notate it on the budget report so that those questions are answered, so that and I mean, a lot of them will stay the same. Like, this isn't a grant that we're spending it on, and here's the revenue side of it. That way, until they decide that they want you to break out the highway from the general fund, that will help just notate those things that you might have questions on and he can answer.
Yep. And just to be clear, the reason you can't do that, Chuck, is, that's not proper accounting process to net your revenues and your expenses, so the auditors wouldn't like that. So that's why you can't go against your expense to show you haven't overspent, is it has to show in a revenue line and the expense has to show in the expense line.
Right, no, I understand that. What's that?
Yeah, so that's just why it has to get reported the way it does, because that's the proper accounting process.
But you would still have, so it wouldn't go back into the general fund with everything, it would be my own, like what Rockingham does, if they have a grant, that grant has its own line item. So it's totally transparent, you can see it right there. So it makes it easier come town meeting time for everybody to track exactly what's going on.
Okay.
I don't know what Putney's doing, but.
And, you know, this process is, again, having them Rick in here as experts that do this every day. Technology in the world's moving fast. Our town, our beautiful old town, we also are evolving to meet that. And that's the whole purpose of having them as a strategic partner. And I think this is a great example of what they bring to the table.
You think Gabriel's bad, wait till you look at the storm expense for next year.
Yeah.
We're gonna go, Chucky, you really blew your budget.
That's all right.
Any more comments from general public? Okay, again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Cynthia, Darlene.
I gotta get up at 3 o'clock, I gotta go.
Paul, thank you very much for being here.
Safe travel.
Be safe. Okay, that brings us to 7/29/21 storm. Progress update.
We're not quite done that line item. Do you want to go over the first 2 pages of the budget as you requested, at least the first page?
Yes.
I'll make a comment right
Please.
away. So, the COLA here is 2.5%, but I'm, in the last couple of years, we've made it less than 3%, but I'm wondering if, given inflation next year, we want to try it back to 3%, at least in the budget? Or no?
Comments?
Well, I'm just thinking there's inflation this year still.
Oh, yes.
And we try to peg the employee raises to the cost of living increases, which we did last year. And if anybody has a crystal ball, can think what it's going to be when we vote on employee COLAs next year. Do we want to have enough in the budget to cover the actual cost of living? Anyway, that's just a comment.
No,
we can talk about
I'm
later.
listening agreement. The only problem is sometimes they think they're automatically gonna get it when we actually address it when that time comes. But
Yeah.
I'm with you. These are
Understand that.
budget numbers, so.
I think we just have to be clear when we,
Yep.
vote on that in June, that this is what the cost of living is and.
Excellent point. If I could just add, I've always been taught that he or she that uses the crystal ball will 100% of the time eat glass. So that's a good point. Inflation, obviously, we all read about it. We all know about it. I too, am with Sue on this. I mean, inflation in the intermediate period, in the very least, I think it's reasonable to say is going to be considerably higher than we normally would anticipate, given the unique events of the last 19 months. And I certainly would be amenable to changing that figure to a higher number.
I don't have a problem with it, no. 3%, whatever.
Yeah.
I just think
Toby?
realistic.
3%?
That's what I say.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, as we know, if things are different next June, then it doesn't have to be 3%. That's more surplus.
Any comments on that from the public? Okay. Further comments?
I'd like to take line item by line item, if you would.
Please, then proceed.
Selectmen's salary, as you can see, it's been constant for 8+ years.
I'm sorry, Kevin, I'm sorry. What agenda item are you under?
Still the financial discussion.
Oh, okay, so you're working on the budget for next year?
Going over the first page that we started last meeting.
Oh, I guess I missed that. Sorry, I was confused where we were. I thought we were talking about the storm. Thanks.
Okay, comments?
I have no problem with keeping it as it is.
I don't either.
Any issues there with anybody? Okay,
Clerk salary, we went up 2 years ago.
Are we okay there?
We should be fine. Social Security is based on the COLA and what was done last year. I'll adjust that.
please.
Retirement is the same thing. Health insurance, the figures have not come out yet. The perspective is saying something like 5% for the remainder of FY '22, which would be in part of the FY '23. So that's all we can predict. So I will, when the information comes in, I will bring this back. So this item should be tabled until further information is available.
Okay, so table.
Selectmen's expenses seems to be running up and down. The 4,000 seems to be working right now. I just put it as level funded, but would be your call.
And that's Fact TV Plus.
Select board needs. If you did tablets, which we've been talking about, anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
Why is there a zero next one?
So are we all set with that one?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
The next one, it hasn't come in yet. It should have been read. But I will have information soon on that.
Okay, so that's an update. Our computer software, NEMRIC.
Computer expenses, yes. It goes up roughly about 5% each year. Again, we haven't got that figure, but it's pretty common that it goes to that point. But I will check into it before we finalize that number.
Okay.
Did that include, or does that include the money that we were paying Russ for the website update? It wasn't very much, I know, but.
That would be out of that line, probably, yes. Yes.
I have to adjust that.
Contract services, computer contract services.
That
IT.
hasn't come in yet. So we will come back to that.
Okay, school merger expense. I think we covered that, right?
Yes, I have to continue using it because it still has monies.
All right, so the total number still needs to be adjusted based on your acquisition of additional outliers, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, any questions on this portion before we move forward? Okay. Total office supplies.
Miscellaneous, again, it's a bouncing ball, but it looks to be that last year we spent $3,000 on an item that we had only $1,750 in the budget. So we went, again, maintained it last year, and then this year it looks to be like we're going to go over that also. Miscellaneous can be anything from paper to requests for bids, that's just a miscellaneous item so that we have a place to cover all of our requests that we don't know what's coming up in the year.
So given the greater cost of everything, should we put in maybe like 2,000?
I had 2,800, but it's up to you.
Oh, we didn't write that in, so.
Yeah, it's there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It is there.
I'm sorry. Okay, got it. I'm on the page now.
Town meeting expenses?
That is still okay. We were worried that it was gonna go up beyond us because the company changed, but it didn't. So
Okay.
we should be able to maintain that.
Volunteer recognition?
Same thing, the plaques and clocks are the same place, and yes, that's.
Advertising for legal notices, bid requests?
Again, it all depends on the year, but maintains about a $4,000 average, would be safe to say. More legal notices are needed and more bid requests have been apparent, so.
Vermont League Cities and Towns?
They have not got back to us, but typically it's a 5% increase, but I will be getting that information shortly.
Okay, training, meetings and materials?
We've been maintaining the $300 for many years. I don't see a need to go up until it's apparent that COVID is over and you guys start using it for meetings outside this town.
The Wyndham Regional Planning?
Typically, they go up at 5%, but they have not declared their raise either.
Okay, that's an outlier as well. Insurance?
Same thing. We have not, we're just barely getting our information requests from VLCT for property and casualty, workman's comp, and unemployment.
Any whisper numbers for that? I mean, that sounds to me like something that could seriously be a little higher than normal.
It could be a little bit higher, but again, it typically is about 5%. So
Okay.
That's what that number is. But again, when it becomes very apparent, we'll get right after it.
Legal services?
You can see that FY21, we jumped to almost 15,000. That is not the normal. So I would think and hope we could keep it to the 8,500 level fund that one.
It's quite a variation from year to year.
It is.
4,000 to
It
13,000.
all depends on our need.
Yeah.
You never can tell.
Town office phones?
That one I'm going to check on. They had been going up just like the electricity, but they kind of maintained right now. We changed companies to Citricom, which has been a very good move for us. So I'm estimating, but I will be coming back to you with more information on that.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns from the select board on what we've covered so far? Seeing none, let's move to the town report. Town report staff, administrative hours.
Kelly placing all of the information that she receives from all of the allocations, school and fire, and puts them all together into the town report and creates it. The bulk mailing, as you can see, has gone down because less people are asking for it to be mailed. They come get it, which is really nice. And the actual cost of the town report, outsourced, has kind of maintained its dollar amount, and we're printing a few less than what we used to have 3 or 4 boxes left. That's just wasteful, and so we've cut it down to a manageable amount of a box, maybe a box and a half left.
That's
at the end of
what
the
we
year.
have left now.
That's what we do. So
Yeah.
that's why we can maintain that.
Mhm.
Moving on to the executive department, salaries and wages, salary town manager.
Okay, again, I use the
I thought we were
2%,
just doing the first page.
and that's up to you folks.
We'll do the second page next.
Very good.
The problem is we don't have, we've gone past so many, we don't still have enough numbers.
Yeah, we did.
We don't, we don't. It's early, but if you don't start now, Craig,
I know,
we'll
but
get it
I was
done.
gonna say, we really didn't answer any questions for you because we're still waiting for
Some of these answers.
And the second page are all blue too, so.
All right, we will look at it, and it's good to start early. Okay, we now concluded with the financial discussion.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we can move on to the 7/29/21 storm and the progress update thereof.
Financially, we went over it. Again, we've spent to date $550,000 plus or minus. And how we paid for that is the $250,000 from the emergency and working capital and the $225 from the line of credit, making it $475. The difference is $75,000, which has not been addressed. I don't know what your pleasure is on this, whether we let it ride, use funds from the general fund as has been explained to us tonight, or do we cover it with the line of credit? That would be your call. And I'm telling you right now that we spent $75,000 that's been not addressed.
Well,
That has
did
no-
we make a decision that we would not get a line of credit, or?
We already have the line of credit. It's whether we take out more money out of the line of credit to cover this, or do you let it
But
ride?
that is a loan, right? The line of credit.
Right now, it's just a line of credit, and it's a loan, but there's no,
But we already talked about this, and we decided that we would not use a loan if there's money available.
I mean, after what Cynthia, we just discussed, sounds like we can at least get it by with for the next 3 weeks and come back to us without having to dip into the loan. Unless we're missing something. We hired this firm to come back with information that reassures us that we don't need to borrow it.
I'm good with that, knowing now that we have the 380,000 from surplus, so we will not. So I'm fine with it. It's up to you guys. It's.
What are our major outstanding, Kenwood Hill or Covered Bridge?
We're putting some things out to bid as we speak. That's in my manager report. But saying that out loud, it's Kenwood Covered Bridge is went out today.
Yeah.
Chuck and I went through a list of contractors and we sent letters. We have the front entrance that's gone out to bid, and our trash has gone out to bid. Those three things. Trash, of course, won't have any impact on our budget for another whole year, but the entrance has been earmarked from surplus last year to get the entrance completed.
I went back to storm a minute. So Covered Bridge, that's still outstanding, and
we have a lot more money to spend on the storm damage.
Yeah.
right.
I mean, we're not done by any means.
No.
So, moving it, given what we know, what we have, are we to authorize our town manager to go ahead and utilize the $75,000 from the general fund?
Kevin, it's Cynthia. I would, in the next week or the next few days, have Russ and Darlene sit down and do an analysis of where you're at, what you think the expenditures are going to be in the next few weeks. Look at your cash flow, what money, give yourself a cash flow analysis so that we can really understand. I think somebody just said it, work with us, have him talk to Darlene and have them sort that out as to where they are and how much in the next couple of weeks they think they're going to have to spend on the storm. Because it's really, I know you have the cash, but I don't know what your next few weeks look like with bills coming in. And that's something Darlene can work with you guys on, that cash flow analysis. That would be a suggestion. And then I would probably give him the go-ahead to do whatever the two of them come up with as to the best next step to help pay for this storm. I'd let them work together on it. I think, like you said, we're a partner in this. We want to make sure that we're giving you the best information to make the best decision. And I want him to start using Darlene for that and Nimric for that advice and that information.
Or our strategic partner, and as another excellent suggestion, and one that I certainly think we should adopt.
So Cynthia, we have 3 weeks until next meeting, so we're comfortable between now and the next meeting. We're gonna be able to pay bills and get by without borrowing any money.
I believe that, yes, I believe if Darlene is asked that, she will agree with that. There's lots of money sitting in the bank account, yes.
Yes,
Thank you
I
very
agree.
Okay,
But I also don't know how much they expect for bills next week. I mean, I just heard the number of 75,000. I don't know if there's another 100,000 coming in, I don't know. And that's why you have to work with the manager to find that out.
Yep.
Did you want to, thank you both very much. Did you want to, Chuck, did you want to chime in on where you think we're going to be, for what it's worth?
I
Even
would,
though that we meeting
so
together.
I would say right now, we're probably 75% done.
Okay.
75% as far as money or as far as
Well,
road mileage or,
No, as far as damage.
yeah,
So we've got 75% of the damage taken care of. So,
But for tonight, as long as we can live 3 more weeks and get this information, come back to us, we're not saying we're done spending money, we're just saying we got enough to get through the next 3 weeks and pay our bills.
I would not be surprised if you ate up another $250,000 before this was done.
yeah. Well, I think the
At
idea
least.
of figuring it out would be a good one, then everybody will know.
So Russ will sit with Darlene
Yes.
and come up with a schematic that fits what we have to have done. Any other comments on the storm and the progress?
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Highway Department, discussion.
So I would like to extend our summer hours. Right now, we work 4 days a week, and with all the contractors working, we are supposed to be switching back to 5 days a week, getting done at 2:30 in the afternoon. Well, that doesn't work out real well. We're working with contractors to get stuff done. So I'd like to extend that until we get things a little better under control. Weather providing, I mean, it starts snowing, obviously, things have got to be switched up a little bit and change the program. That's one thing. I also, do we have that grant that I showed you? The grant for the blower?
No, I don't have that in the packet.
Okay. Well, at some point, you're gonna see, I'm looking to go after a grant for a 3-point hitch leaf blower to go in the back of the tractor, which blows the leaves out of these stones that we've put in all over. We've got one now, it's old, it's showing signs of wear. Grants and Aid has a program where we can buy one, and it's a $5,000 blower, we would have to match $1,000. So, I think it's a good deal, it's a good time to jump on it, and when the time comes, you guys are gonna have to sign the grant, so.
okay, good.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Chuck. There's also been discussion, I'll bring it up as the chair, of the structure of the highway department, and perhaps visiting the current structure, revisiting the current structure, how the apparatus is set up, but perhaps the way it currently functions now as far as entity can be examined and changed, whether it's a permanent change or not changed at all, or an experimentation period to see if we can better utilize our resources and our expense ratios, also complementing the highway department and Chuck Lawrence and Russ and the entire team for doing an outstanding and exceptional job. But it has come that there has been a discussion or perhaps a need to revisit how the highway department is structured, and perhaps discussing that now, at least briefly, and getting it on the table as to how we might look forward to looking at it as maybe even a more detached entity as far as administration. Discussion.
I'm with basically what you're saying. I think being involved with a lot of different town formats and everything, and the size of our town, and with this whole, not just this storm, with this Act 64 and all this, what's going on, almost every town I end up dealing with, it's getting to be a different role of the road commissioners or the road foreman or the assistant foreman. There's different formats, and it seems to be that the job that Chuck is doing, the job of the town manager, sometimes there's one in the middle, and sometimes, but I think we should start to look at the highway standing a little bit more on its own. They would be a little more involved with taking care of the bids and taking care of the contract and looking at that role. Meanwhile, the town manager will still have full control over the monies and what was going on. But the day-to-day operation and all that, I think that we should start to look at it. One is, even Chuck's not a super young person, and he's got a young crew. And I think we need to encourage them to be more involved with decision making. And because what you're doing is, and I see Chuck all the time, you're running out to get prices for culvert, you're running out to look at jobs, you're running out to deal with all the vendors, you're dealing with all the contractors, and it's not going to change. It's getting worse and worse. You can spend days just going out and trying to find how to buy gravel and where to gravel. We're asking a lot more from the town manager to do other roles, and I almost think that if we need to start discussing that with Chuck, and does he have help enough to help him out in the shop so he can start to take more of a role of what Russ is doing. It's just where I'd like to see us to start this.
And that would separate out the budget too. We'd have a separate budget, and that would require a separate vote too by the town, or?
I don't think you have to go there. Yeah. Good.
You've got revenue and you've got expenditures, it's gonna be just like the fire district, it's separated.
Right, just like the fire district, yeah.
We could. I'm not saying I'm sold on any of it. I'm just like, we need to start pursuing it. We start to look at it. We're asking more from the town manager to do other work too. I mean, we're asking them, we used to have more people in that building besides what we had now, because we had more people involved with the listing and all that, and we're asking more and more. But meanwhile, that highway is almost a separate whole entity that they're out there doing stuff. And I really think the future down the road, we're gonna have to learn to share more with other towns. Equipment, resources. It's going to take more time for somebody like Chuck to be out talking to them. One day we might be helping Putney, they help us. All these things you're not really doing from an office. You're doing because you're working next to those people, whether it's Grafton, whether it's Rockingham, or whether it's Putney. It's, to me, that's real important down the road where we're going. And I think we should just as this start a conversation, but I think we should start to have a discussion and heading in that direction. That it might not make sense, but at least we can look at different ways. And I deal with a lot of different towns. They're all changing. It's every time the road foreman quits, the next one, it seems to be two people taking over. One that's just doing the paperwork and working with the town manager, and one who's actually out there, what they call foreman of the job. That person's overseeing. And I don't think it's ever going to change. With the amount of mileage we have, every town that has 80 miles has 7 people on the crew. And that's just about where we are. We have in the 80s to 90 miles of highway, and we'll have 7 people. It's to get more and more work out of those 7 without having to spend all this time on the phone and doing different things is what it is. And I mean, years ago when I got on, we didn't have to have road foremen and flag guys on every job. Now he goes out to do a job, he's only really got 1 person working, 3 people standing there, and you got no choice. And it's all about, he's gonna have to make a decision that some days I'm gonna be cheaper to go get a flag crew to come in and do the contract so we can do it. Those are all stuff that he has to be there making those decisions. And I think that's where we're going.
Good idea.
Yeah. Russ, what's your opinion on that?
I really don't have one, other than I'd like to know how that's going to affect our state aid to highways, state aid to the town. We just had a separation of the fire districts. Whole time was pilot. So would that be the same thing? Would the highway department receive their own allocations from the state, and what would that do to the bottom line? And as a whole, is it beneficial to receive more monies, or doesn't matter, it's a percentage and bang, it's separated? And I just would want to know all of that.
I would think at the end of the day, if you had so much in this hand, so much in this hand, you still have the same amount.
That's what I hope, but
It might make a step in there somewhere or something.
Kevin,
Yes.
Kevin, this is Darlene. So I don't see that separating it between funds doesn't act like the fire district. Your fire district is a total separate entity from what you're doing. The highway is part of the town. It's already a part of your budget. If you just made it clearer to taxpayers and Chuck so he can manage his stuff by separating it into a fund, you're not asking for anything different than you already have, just like Jason just said. You're just making it clearer to understand what's happening in that department on your financials. I'm only talking about that. All the other stuff is up to you guys, but for your financials, that you're just moving that stuff. You're not giving him money. It's just going into a separate fund to report differently. That's how I operated and see that in many of the other towns I work with. It's very common, and you don't treat them as a separate entity. They're still a part of the town. They're just a different fund on your balance sheet in your budget to actuals or your budget status.
Agree with you
It's
100%.
very easy. And I think it's a lot more transparent, honestly.
And that's where we want to get to, right? If I may interject, right? Compliance and operational evolution is really unfortunately what everything's about, whether you're in private industry or even small towns.
I absolutely agree. And as a taxpayer, it bothers me that it's not more transparent. Then you can clearly see, in a given year, is this because of an issue related to a hot, like the storm? Right now, the way it reads, nobody can clearly understand all that money was spent on the storm because it sits in an expense in selectmen. It has nowhere until people start asking or drilling down, they have any idea by looking at your financials that is highway related.
And again, appreciate, your excellent input on that. And that was what I was going to just finish that too, which is called the after action memo. We'll have an after action memo on the storm, what we did really well, what we could have maybe done better, some of the things we may have learned, and certainly not only from, as you pointed, the importance of transparency on the financial side, but the ability to get our crews out there. And in this particular case, they did an exceptional job when we were stressed to hold the best contractors who were being pulled in every direction, being able to make sure that we could pay them, make sure that we could keep them longer, to make sure that we met our ability to keep people safe and get the roads open, which they did the greatest job ever. The portion of structure, though, there's also, as you said, that's something for us to discuss. That's something that we can look into too, because experimentation to make sure we maybe could do better on with our compliance and operational role and transparency and performance by taking a look at how we structure the highway department. And that was simply what we were, I was bringing up, and I think it's been a good discussion. Unless anyone has something else to add.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
We've heard from everyone. Thank you very, very much. Moving on to the invoice for the school district.
We tabled that.
Okay, thank you. And now publishing names of the deceased for the town report. Was brought up last time.
It was brought up last time, that it would be nice to be able to have the names of folks in the town report that have passed away in the town of Westminster. I did a little research for you guys and why it was dropped and all of that. And so the first one was in 2007, vital statistics is why we dropped the names and just put the statistics. The second page is just for your eyes only, is the people that have passed away in the town. And the third is what folks have to sign now by asking for death certificates, because it has been such a problem with identity theft of the deceased. I can tell you firsthand that both of my parents have passed, and we had a bear of a time with fraud cases against their names. Both had different problems, but all folks, their names are published enough, and to have them published in a open document just is asking for problems, and that's why most towns have deleted them, including the births, because again, young children are just getting their social security numbers, et cetera, and that information gets to be stolen. It's a different world we live in, and it's unfortunate. I used to love to read the births, the marriages, and the deaths in town. Some I knew, some I didn't. But I understand why the clerks are staying firm with this, that towns don't do it anymore. And this is why, is because of the possibility of personal theft from their accounts.
People have obituaries in the newspaper. It's not like nobody knows that they died.
I'm telling you what I was asked to find out, Toby. This is exactly what I experienced, was the phone calls, the emails, the mail asking for more funds from accounts that never existed, the research, the time, and the energy that spent to put their accounts to rest were substantial for me. Did you have something to say? Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a comment.
Please.
I talked to Donna Dawson because she is on the Gazette board, and they do a nice thing, which is remembrances. People who have died, just their names, like it's be in the town report. And she said they ask relatives if it would be okay. She thinks it's really not a big issue that people will be going back to the town report. And I mean, there are better ways to get information on people who have died. So I don't think it's a big issue, but I don't have a big investment either. And if the clerks feel strongly about it, fine, but.
It's public information, they can get it. I mean, it isn't like we're releasing anything that, you're not supposed to release it. It's there. Anybody can call up the town right now if they really want to hack you and go, hey, we want to see who passed. They can see it. And I'm going, of all the people, do you think that all the good residents in town be kind of nice to be able to look at it and go, Mr. Allen passed away, if you want to get rid of him as a selectman, but nice, but
And by the time it's in the town report, like almost a year has gone by.
No, I totally agree too, and I appreciate though the prudent caution that you have, and wise counsel, Russell, but I'm okay with it if everyone else is.
I don't feel strongly either way. I can see both sides. Fine with me.
But I mean, it meant a lot to me. I appreciate giving this sheet. There were several on here that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I go, oh man, now when I run into their mother, their father, or brother, sister, I go, oh, I didn't know you lost your mother or father. I just feel like I wasn't blindsided. And hey, how's your mom doing? And find out they passed away a year ago,
Select board, what's your pleasure?
I'd be in favor of including the names of the
on that one.
passed away in the previous year.
I mean, I think a lot of the stuff you're talking about, your parents might have had, a lot of people that knew about them before they died. And so therefore they pursued,
Maybe criminals?
No, I don't mean criminals, but for example, if they gave money to an organization, and then the organization really wants to see if they could get
And almost every year, we pick one of these persons to be in our book anyways.
Right, it's true.
So,
Right.
so formal motion, or do we just want to take a straw vote?
I'm just in favor. I don't think it's up to you guys whether you want a motion or not, but when we go forward the book.
All in favor to include them?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so decision has been made to include publishing the names of the seats in the town report to honor their memory.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cemetery deeds.
In your packet, you have 3 requests for single burial plots. Missing one, sorry. Actually, the last one low is asking for 3. This one's a little convoluted. He has 6. They're scattered throughout the Westminster West Cemetery. He's requesting 3 in a row, so we're buying back 3 and selling him 3. We're buying back 3 and he's getting 3 new ones, all contiguous. So,
What would that motion sound like?
Just want to make sure the town manager, everything's in order. No issues.
it is, there's no issues. We've had a lot of go around with the lows, and we finally got an answer for them that made sense to them, so.
Wants to make a stab at the motion.
And I just you can do all 3 at the same time.
Okay.
You have the originals, Kevin, it's stamped on the back, so please.
Yes.
Those are the ones to
I got
sign.
it. Yes. I'm signing all 3?
Yeah, those,
Okay.
Names on everyone.
No, it's only on 1.
No, I got all 3.
No, he's only on one.
2. He's on 2.
I'm on 1.
He's on the last one.
Oh, I got 2.
So that's okay.
Yeah,
I got all 3.
How about,
You're the duly authorized agent.
Yeah, no, there's
Yeah.
2 different people.
Just doesn't have your name listed under the line.
Got 2 with your name, whatever.
I move that we approve the 3 cemetery deeds as presented and printed to the select board.
Second.
But is that adequate?
that's kind of,
Okay.
I don't have, one is my cousin, but I don't have to recruit myself.
No.
no.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Make sure you let my cousin know I voted for him.
Okay, manager's report.
If you could, yes. Wait a minute, we have a welcome
Yeah.
package.
Welcome
Gee.
package.
Yeah, I just want,
Oh, I apologize.
no, that's right, I'll make this quick. So Pauline O'Brien, the town clerk, said that she had been dealing with new people coming to town, and it would be great if we could have some sort of a welcome packet. We've talked about this
Yeah,
before.
that's important.
So to get things going, I suggested the old committee.
Russell.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna see if Pauline and I can get together, and somebody else who wants to.
I'd love to have it. Since I've been on this board, I've been asking for that.
I know. Well, I think assembling the information is what's gonna be.
Yeah. And
But we
a
can
lot of
get
times we
started.
listen to the input of the realtors because they're the ones
Yeah.
who said, yeah, here's a home and then go in and this is a welcome package. And we had a little version of it. Russ was working on it one time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and we do have that, in which we have given all of the new
Uh-huh.
people, and which is a substantial amount this
Yeah.
past year.
Right, yeah.
But typically they come to the town hall and we give it to them, but it would be really nice to
Update
have,
it and-
well, even simple things as groceries. These folks came sight unseen, our next door neighbor's right here. Maureen Young sold to I don't even want to say the name, can't think of it, do something. Anyway, doesn't matter. They came in and the whole family came in and literally had not a clue where church is, where food is, where any entertainment is, the schools. I mean, just keep naming things that we take for granted. They had no idea. They had no idea where to do. So that was actually the 3 of us, and we spent time, explaining different things. We did the trash, we did the schools. They're going to homeschool their
The
2
trash
youngest.
alone is probably a big,
It
people aren't
was,
used to
and
dealing with it that way.
Texas.
Where I caretake, they are they don't do it that way.
Massachusetts is.
They just don't, and it's
Yeah.
hard to
Yeah.
get that through.
Texas actually, apparently, their town did a pretty good job with it,
Oh, yeah.
but they were impressed with curbside. They didn't have to bring it anywhere, so.
Excellent
yeah.
idea.
But
So
anyway,
I'll get
it's
with her and we'll see
absolutely.
anybody else who wants to.
Wonderful.
Can we add that if they're moving onto a dirt road, it's only dirt 15% of the time, the rest of the time it's either mud or snow?
Don't buy a Prius, I know.
A copy of that policy, though,
I don't
could
think
be in
she's
there.
the one to
You're in
go.
Vermont.
Well, yeah, that's
For
right.
the page
You have a
4.
policy, put it in the packet.
Yeah.
What's
Took
that?
a pic.
We have a roads policy.
Yes, we
Just
do.
put it in the packet, just an FYI.
Yeah,
If you're
exactly.
living out in,
The snow, the
Yeah,
mud.
wherever.
And if you got any complaints, have a picture of Chucky and his cell phone. This is the person you want to see.
That's all right.
I thought Babs had something when she was here. We booked with some info in it. It was never like a packet.
Great.
I don't think.
I'm glad she's excited about that.
Honestly, I don't know.
That was a
I-
long time.
Yeah.
A great idea.
I've never seen it.
A great
We'll
idea.
update stuff.
Okay, any other comments on that?
Thank you.
Thank you. Managers report.
So we met, Chuck and I met with the USDA representative. It is a program that gives towns the ability to apply for extra funding for water-related incidents that were not covered by like a FEMA incident. So it's not storm-related, it's water-related. Chuck brought to my attention near Kern Hatton, we have a bank sloughing off that's right tight to Kern Hatton Road. Water is doing it, and it's part of the problem. So we showed him, that piece. He looked at Piggery, where the water is coming in and taking our dirt, and it's getting very sheared right tight to the Piggery Road. Not anything to do with the culvert, it's just the bank. He looked at that one, and you brought him to South.
I took him to Davidson Hill, I took him to
Okay.
South Street where the retaining wall is beginning to fail there, the slope. Those do not qualify
Meet the
for
quality.
for any funding. It's gotta be stream related, so Piggery Road, because the stream changed course and it's eroding the bank out, caused it to slide, that would qualify. He hasn't actually looked at Kern Hatton. I called him and left him a message to come back and look at it because I found it after he had been there, so.
So anyway, it's just a FYI that there is funding
Possible.
and different possibility. I told you about this, but I'll tell you again. We set out 3 bids this week. The trash and recycling curbside pickup is due for another 3-year contract. All the bids are due in the middle of October. Bids are out for the front entrance, again, due in the middle of October. And the bid for the Kenwood Covered Bridge Road went out today, 14 letters. I'm willing to listen. We get no response from an article in the newspaper anymore. It's better that we send letters. They receive them. If they're interested, they call immediately. If they're not, then they just don't. But in the newspaper, it is such a crapshoot that no one saw it because they don't get newspapers anymore. And the Gazette is very limited to just Westminster residents. The Brattleboro Reformer is being read less and less by our area. And to send it to Keene Sentinel, we're talking $1,000 before you even blink, just for one single request proposal. So what I did, like I said, I sent out 14 letters to every area contractor I went through the list with Chuck, and we added a couple, took away a couple. But anyway, so we're hoping that's the best way to get at least 3 or 4 bids for the Kenwood Covered Bridge Road.
See how it works.
So
Russ, have you checked into going on to the state bid form on it there? Because you can put it on anytime you want. And it eliminates it to 3 bids, and it basically, I've had more towns where they'll just say, they don't even send it to me, they just said, go on to the state website, go on there, and it'll say a bid for this such and such.
We put one out there and we never received anything.
You don't, but
So-
it covers your ability that you
Yeah.
actually did send it out to, on it. And normally what you do is you actually put it there, then you call 5, 6, 7, said, here, the bid's right there, and they just download it and you're done. So you don't send it to them, you just get on and call all the local ones and say you want it, it's right there. And then it eliminates anybody questioning you sending it out, because it's the state of Vermont who actually put it on your site, on it.
Okay,
Vermont Business Registry.
I believe it's free, Russ, so if
Yeah,
I'm
it
wrong,
is.
let me.
It was anyway,
Yeah.
the last time I used it.
okay. We'll check into it. Thank you. Anything else?
Yeah. No, sorry, that's it.
Okay, boards and commissions.
I have nothing new to report.
Any other business?
I have nothing.
I move we adjourn.
It's always
We,
Toby making that noise.
Can always count on it.
Yeah.
We have a motion to adjourn until October 13th, 2021. It's been seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Did you just come to observe?
Yeah.
Great,
I've never
thank
been to
you.
a select
You're
board
welcome.
meeting, so I
What's
figured-
that?
I've never been to a select board meeting, so I was like, you know what?
Yeah, welcome.
This would be the one
Welcome.
time you bet, so you did it, you did well. You just
Yeah,
stayed
you
away.
stayed to the bitter end.
Yeah, so when you get together,
Recording stopped.
oh, I went to this exciting.
You're brave.
Yeah.
I'm gonna see what they actually do.